Tonight, I want to talk about conflict from another place. I'm not going to talk about conflict from within, but really the conflict that can impact the church from those things that are without. You see, I believe that we need to understand that the walls are under attack, and the Lord's church is under the attack. And last night, I asked everyone to text me 3 things that an immature Christian might do or prioritize above the church. And y'all sent me a variety of things. And I'm not going to display them tonight only because I wanted to do the summary. And I can tell you the summary is very simple. The biggest issue we have in the church today is worldliness and the impacts on the worldly, materialistic minds around us. But you know, at the time of Nehemiah, they had a real problem on their hands. They had people that wanted to destroy them. They wanted to destroy the walls that were being built. And in Nehemiah chapter 4, verse 7 and 8, it says, "Now it happened when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were being restored and the gaps were being closed, that they became very angry, and all of them conspired together to come and attack Jerusalem and create confusion." You know, this is a common thing throughout Scripture and throughout our lives. When good things are happening, the devil pounces. When good things are happening, Satan wants to cause confusion, wants to cause problems on the church, wants to have us refocus or reorganize our priorities in ways that can be quite concerning. The Bible teaches 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 8, "Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour." In what way he walks and in what manner, it's unclear. But what we do know is that his influence and his presence is very real in this world today. And Satan, as a roaring lion, is seeking to destroy the church. Seeking to destroy you as a member of that body. Because if he can affect you and he can change you, your negative influence can corrupt those around you. Satan is coming at us, and we need to be aware of that. And just as Nehemiah had to prepare for the impending attack, we have to be prepared for the attacks that will come in on this church. Because as you build unity, as you build teamwork, as you build a core, and as you expand and evangelize and grow that team, you're going to have those that come in that have different backgrounds, different perspectives. And we need to understand that the worldliness that we live in, the world we live in, has a strong appeal to pull people away. And we need to be sober and vigilant. We need to understand our adversary is real and is dangerous. But that doesn't make us weak. We need to understand the strength that will be with us as we are being attacked. The reality is our team will be attacked by the pressures and the cares of this world. Constantly be attacked. But James chapter 5 verse 11 says, "Behold, we consider the blessings who remain steadfast. You have heard of the steadfastness of Job, and you have seen the purpose of the Lord, how the Lord is compassionate and merciful." You know, Job wasn't attacked because he was sinful. He wasn't suffering all those things because of some bad thing he did or some bad thing his parents did. He was suffering because he was righteous and good. And he was being tested. And we can look at his example of steadfastness and his commitment to the Lord and see that even in that time of temptation, in that time of punishment and misery and all of those things, he remained faithful to God. And we can see how the Lord is compassionate and merciful if we will follow him. And we will be successful if we don't turn our backs. But we keep our backs shoulders to shoulder, facing the enemy together. 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 7 says, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perisheth, though it is tested by fire, may be found to result in the praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Someone might say, well, our church is great. We don't have any problems. We don't receive any of these. You talk about these conflicts. You talk about these problems that come from the outside. We don't have any of that. A congregation that doesn't have any of that is a congregation that's not actually evangelizing. And if you're not evangelizing, then you're not practicing the Great Commission. If you're not practicing the Great Commission, then you're not one of the disciples. Because that's what the disciples do. They go and evangelize. They go and teach the gospel. and teach them to observe all things whatsoever was commanded of God. We have that instruction imparted to us, and we have to be actively doing that. And if we feel like we have peace, and if we feel like we have no problems, and we feel like we're not tested by any kind of worldly influence, then we're not dealing with anyone from the world. We're happy with our homegrown folks. We were discussing it at dinner tonight. Marcus and I come from different backgrounds. We come from different lives. But you know, he's a child of God. He is of great value, and he's a warrior for Christ. Not because of who his parents were, any more than who my parents were. We're shoulder to shoulder brothers fighting forward. Why? Not because I came from a multi-generational Christian family, which I didn't. But because we were both covered by the blood of Christ. Doesn't matter if we are homegrown Christians who've been multi-generation or we're new converts who are committed to the Lord. We are the same. We're in this battle. And we have to work together because this world will be against us. Will we stand strong? And James chapter 1 verse 2 and 4 says, "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." You know who some of the closest people I have in this entire world are? Are the people that I've been in the trenches with, that I have been to war with. And I'm not talking physical war, I'm talking spiritual war. The people that I sit with and we mourn and we are concerned about someone's lost soul and we're concerned about doing the right thing and having hard conversations, those are the people I'm closest with. Those are the ones where we share the same battle wounds. You know, there is a strength that comes through that adversity. When you are working side by side as brothers and sisters trying to tackle the sin of the world and take it head on, we are outnumbered, we're outmanned, we're outgunned, but we have the Lord and the truth on our side. Have confidence. But the world out there is vast and many. But if we go together and we go as a unit and we go to support each other, we can do great things. And we can convince the lost of the love and the power of Jesus Christ. Count it joy when we face those trials. Count it joy when we go through the trenches together, because we will come out stronger. And we will come out with greater faith, greater confidence, because you only know what you have faced. You don't know the things you don't know, but once you have faced that and you've persevered, that's not hard anymore. You go, yeah, I'm still here. I did it. I was able to get through it. It makes it a whole lot easier for the next time. You get confidence when you go through those things. You see the power of God working through those things, and that steadfastness, that effect on your team will be evident. You won't cower as a team. You will be strong as a team. But you know, the enemy understood that this wall around Jerusalem, as it was being constructed, and at this point of the story, it had been built about halfway tall. So there were gaps. There were holes that needed to be plugged. There were areas that were weaker, areas that were stronger. And so what did the enemies do? They said in verse 11, "And our adversary said, they will neither know nor see anything till we come into their midst and kill them and cause the work to cease. So it was when the Jews who dwelt near them came that they told us 10 times, for whatever place you turn, they will be upon us." You see, the enemy said, hey, we're going to go in, we're going to be sneaky, we're going to go on all sides, we're going to find an opening, and when they're not expecting you, when they're not looking, we're going to attack and we're going to kill them, and that'll stop the wall from being built. And I want to tell you, the enemy is not coming in through the front door wearing red horns and carrying a pitchfork. The enemy is coming at all sides. He's looking for his greatest weakness. He's looking for your most vulnerable moment, and he's going to pounce. He's looking for your weakest moment to enter into this body so that he can infect the bloodstream of the body, so that he can turn brother against brother, sister against sister. And he's going to go after you over your most vulnerable spot. He's not coming through the front door. And just as these enemies were seeking to confuse and disarm, Nehemiah said, we've got to be prepared. And brothers and sisters, we've got to be prepared to know the attack of our enemy. You see, our walls are under attack. And all around us, we are being drawn into the ways of the world. In some ways, we don't even see it. We don't even notice. It's so subtle. But it's the way of the world. And we need to be aware that the walls all around us are under attack. So what do we do? Ephesians 4:22 says to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. You know the desires that when Satan's coming after your most vulnerable moment or your most vulnerable issue, your most subtle and secret temptation? Satan is going there because he is promising you something that is a lie. You see, everything Satan does, he's the master of lies. He tells you, you will be fulfilled in this. You will be happy in this. This gossip, this lust, this item, this possession, this conversation or this boastful moment, this award will make you feel complete. And Satan will deceive you with desires because the after effects of the life of sin is that of sickness and of sorrow. It's not of peace. It's not of happiness. There's no fulfillment in the world. But the world tells you otherwise. You see, the world says that just a drink is fine. Come out. Let's have a good time. Don't you want to have a good time? Don't you want to hang out? Don't you want to go party? Your friends are going to go. You're going to have a great time. Just a couple of drinks. You know what? We'll order an Uber. Let's order another round of shots. And next thing you know, the night that started off with, well, I'll just go get a drink with some friends, or, oh, I'll just go and do this thing. It's become a night to remember. And you're off having the time of your life until what happens the next day? Reality sets in. Isaiah 5 verse 11 says, woe to those who rise early in the morning that they may follow intoxicating drink, who continue until night till wine inflames them. You know, there is this addictive trait, whether it's alcohol or narcotics or prescription medications that can be abused and misused, but there is this concept that one more drink and I'll be happy. One more pill and I'll be happy. And the reality is you're seeking after something that never sustains, never fills. It just takes you to the next day until you seek it again and seek it again and seek it again, and you wake up in misery. The desire is that of happiness and joy, and that's the promise. But what's the deliverable? Delivers misery. Delivers sadness. Having that surplus of alcohol, having that excess of alcohol or any of those things that can lead to a life of misery. And you're not in your right mind. You're not able to minister. You're not able to serve because you are so focused on that next drink. Your wall is under attack. What about gluttony? Philippians chapter 3 verse 19, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their mind on earthly things. Had a bunch of people wince just now. Talking about wine in a Church of Christ meeting, not going to get in trouble there. Talk about gluttony, whoa, stepping on toes. You know, in the Bible, it's interesting. You know how many times, it's numerous times in the Old Testament especially, where the command and the sin around alcohol abuse is tied to gluttony. Those two things work hand in hand because it's about excess. He's talking about excess and that sin of excess and that mindset of excess. But you know, we live in a culture where every single appetite can be filled. You live in a city, I live in a city where I can pretty much have any cuisine I want. Do I want that today? What do you want for dinner? And we make plans in our life around what our next meal will be. And we think about those things and we prioritize those things and we crave those things. And if you don't get what you want, you might go, well, I wanted something else. You know, I don't know if y'all know this, but I went to Nigeria recently. But in Nigeria, that's a joke because I've said it like 5 times. So, in Nigeria, you know when they eat because they're hungry and they need to sustain themselves. And we wrote a little song with one of the preachers. He says, his song goes something like, they eat what they call swallow, which is soup and cassava, and like a little cassava dough dipped in soup, and they put it in their mouth and they swallow it. They don't chew. So he says, swallow in the morning, swallow in the afternoon, swallow at night. Catchy tune. But you know what he's saying? He's like, that's just what we eat. Like, this whole, where do y'all want to go for dinner? That's not a reality there. We live in a materialistic world where every appetite can be filled. So we need to understand and practice self-control in those things. We need to understand the dangers of setting our life by the clock of what we're going to eat next. Because it can be a temptation that can pull us away from God. You know, Luke chapter 12, verse 15 also warns us of material things. It says in Luke 12:15, he said to them, take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. You know, you see that sometimes someone gets a raise or they get a new job and they go and they buy the newest vehicle. Or they buy the newest beach house or the newest boat. And I'm not going to say, Bible's clear, especially looking, and if anyone knows the dangers of living in the wrong life would be Solomon. But in Ecclesiastes, he talks about the importance of enjoying the fulfillment of your labor. There's nothing wrong in some of those things. But we need to be careful and in moderation, not in excessive, and living in excess to the extent that we have to get the next new thing all the time to replace the thing that still works. You know, you got to have the new iPhone the second the new iPhone comes out. Or the new TV. Or the new whatever. Our life does not consist in the abundance of the things we possess. But the world says yes. The world says that that's what you need to be happy. And those things will be infiltrating into the Lord's church if we're not careful. We need to be careful that we're not prioritizing those things because those things can influence us for bad. What about technology? Psalm 101:3 says, I will set nothing wicked before my eyes. I hate the work of those who fall away. It shall not cling to me. You know, do we let technology run our life? If we were to be honest and we set our cell phones out on the table and say, how many hours, you know, you can look at the screen time on your phone. How many hours were used playing that game, whatever that game is? How many hours was used surfing the internet? How many hours checking the TikToks? How many hours updating Facebook? How many hours doing those things? And it would be embarrassing. Nobody wants to show that. That'd be embarrassing for many of us. Why? Because we want to be entertained. And these things can distract us to such a degree that we miss out on opportunities to talk to our neighbors, to talk to those in the community. And the church can be victim because we can find ourselves all huddled up in our corners, all looking at our phones, and we're not engaging with each other. But you know, cell phones are the technology of the day. It wasn't long ago that we had other concerns of technology, and there'll be something tomorrow. But the point is, we shouldn't put wicked things before our eyes. We need to be careful about the things we see and the things that we let influence us. Because it's real easy for something that's innocent to turn into something that's not. And it's real easy when you're dead scrolling on TikTok or on Reels to just all of a sudden go from looking at a Bible TikTok to something else. It doesn't take long before the content changes. And we need to be careful because Satan will tempt us and we will be tempted at our most vulnerable spot. What about sports? You know, sports and leisure activities can take up a lot of time in our lives. And we need to be careful. Does that mean you should never go to an OU or an OSU football game? Well, yes, because who watches them? You should go to a UT football game, right? There's nothing wrong with having that. In fact, I know some people that have had a lot of valuable family time going to football games, and they make a tradition of some of those things. I'm not saying those things are bad in and of themselves, but do we live our life around those things? Is our child's sport activity the most important thing on our calendar that week? And if it is, then we need to think about our priorities and what we're telling and communicating to our children. Church is important until you have that soccer game. Church is important unless you're going to miss that baseball all-star game. And we have to start questioning, like, what are we teaching them? What are we showing them that the priorities are? The church should be our priority. And when we let leisure activities and sports and other activities dominate our life, then we're missing out. We're missing out. Walk in wisdom towards those who are outside, redeeming the time. We only have so much time. We talked about earlier in this week, it's disputed that there's 24 hours in a day. I'm still waiting for a couple of those hours to show up. So I feel like I'm always running out of time. But we're going to run out of time, and we need to redeem every moment we have. Parents, redeem every moment with your children. Because you blink and it's over. They are 18 years old and they've got a wedding ring on. And you're like, how did that happen? Engagement ring. Clarify. Engagement ring. You're like, how did that happen? How did those things happen? Time. So redeem the time. Make sure every moment you can is spent in grounding them in the truth. Because the world is going to influence you to go and to spread yourself thin across all those many things. You know, another thing that we got to be careful about is that of laziness. Proverbs 19:15 says, slothfulness casts into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. You know, this came up several times in the answers that were sent to me. To be honest, I was a little surprised to see it as often as I did. But the concern about idleness or laziness. And we need to be careful not to be slothful in our behavior, not lazy in our attitude, because the world sees that and Satan will exploit that. If we're not working diligently to serve him and to do the other tasks that we need to do, then we're going to slip and priorities will fall. We need to make sure that we're prioritizing the kingdom of all these things. You know, the world is after us. Do you know probably the thing that affects many of us the very most isn't that it's one thing. It's not that it's two of these things. The problem is we want to do all the things. We want to make sure that we get to see everything that needs to be seen. And we've got the latest news on all the news apps. And we've got to go there. And we're just so busy. We are just so busy. And I see that in our world today. People are so busy. How is that of God? How is that of God? How are we so busy, yet so many little things that the church needed slips in priorities in our life? I don't have time. I'm so busy. I've got these things I've got to do. And I get it. I'm busy. We're all busy. But we have to stop sometimes and just think, why? Why are we so busy? What are all these things and why do they matter? How many of these things do we actually need to have in our life? How many of these things can we cut out of our life so we can prioritize the work of the Lord? Because the Lord's church is going to be lost when people stop buying in and leaning in and pulling the rope and working in the work of the Lord. We're attacked on all sides. And I think about 1 Peter chapter 4, verses 3 and 4 says, for we have spent enough of our past lifetimes in doing the will of the Gentiles when we walked in lewdness, lust, drunkenness, revelries, drinking parties, abominable idolatries. In regard to these, they think it strange that you do not run with them in the same flood of dissipation, speaking evil of you. You know, we have this idea that we can have a foot in the world and a foot in the church. And it doesn't work that way. We need to live a life that rejects that old life that we might have lived, or rejects the standard of the world so much so that they look at you and go, what's wrong with this guy? Why isn't he going and doing the things that we do? Why isn't she going out and participating in the things that we're participating in? Because we've changed. Because we actually believe in what we're teaching. and we're actually practicing what we preach. And we're not just going through life with a Christian tag on our shirt, and we've got the right bumper sticker and the right t-shirt, but we actually believe what we're doing. And it's going to be evident. But all it takes is one to slip, to start souring the spirit and the mood of a congregation, to influence a congregation for bad. Now this external threat that's facing us is now in the church and in the walls. And now you're fighting two battles. You're fighting battles from both inside and outside. Don't let it slip through the cracks. What can we do? Well, we can live as a sojourner lives, not caring so much about this world. 1 Peter chapter 2:11 says, "Beloved, I beg you as sojourners and pilgrims, abstain from fleshly lusts which war against the soul." You know, if you travel like a sojourner, you're going to travel light. You're not going to care about all these things. You're not going to have all these burdens and responsibilities of worldly desires and passions and commitments. Because you just are staying here temporarily. Your home is somewhere else, right? That's what a sojourner is. Their home is somewhere else. And our home is heaven. So why do we care so much about the things here? Why do we care about the accolades and the esteem? Why do we care about all the worldly pleasures that are going to disappear and turn to dust? We need to travel light, doing what we must to survive and to live, but not living for this life, but living for the life to come. So individually, you need to have that consideration so that you can travel together in this way. Not prioritizing all worldly activities and all worldly endeavors, but prioritizing the things that actually matter. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12 says, "All things are lawful for me, but all things are not helpful. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any." We need to live as if we need to live in such a way that we're not going to be brought down. And the best way to do it is, even if you can, doesn't mean you should. And what do I mean by that? There are plenty of opportunities to do activities and to enjoy some of the fruits of your labor. But does that mean that that's what you should do? Maybe sometimes we need to learn to say no. No to things so that we can prioritize the things of the church. Proverbs 25:16 teaches us a very valuable concept for Christians. It says, "Have you found honey? Eat only as much as you need, lest you be filled with it and vomit." I love this passage. You know what he's talking about? You know, some honey's good. I like honey. But if you eat too much, you're going to be sick. And what's the concept here? The concept is to live a life in moderation. To understand the sweetness and the appeal of the good things, but not overindulge and not be so concerned about fulfilling all the appetites of this life that you miss out on the spiritual things that matter more. But here's what's at risk. Matthew 13:22 says, "Now he who receives seed among the thorns is he who hears the word, and the cares for this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful." You see, at the end of the day, this is why this matters. Because you are out sowing seed in this community. You are out spreading the gospel to the lost. And you're going to have people come into this congregation, receive the good news, and then what might happen? One of the brothers or sisters of this congregation says, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. You want to go with me?" And next thing you know, they start prioritizing the social activities beyond the church activities. And now it's really a social friend that they happen to go to church with, but they haven't really built any spiritual bond. And they've been not converted to the gospel, but they've been converted to a friendship or extracurricular activities. The world will be deceitful. And we need to be aware and mindful that what we're converting people to is to the gospel. The relationships, the extras are great, but they need to be grounded in the truth. That's what matters. At the end of the day, that's what's going to keep people committed. But the cares of the world are going to try to choke out that seed. The question is, are you going to help that seed grow, or are you going to be part of the problem? So as a church, you need to see those things as they are. That worldly influence that is trying to bear down on the congregation, is trying to influence the way you think, the way you talk, the places you go. Can you sing "Great Change Since I've Been Born" if you're doing the same thing you've always done? And you say the same things you've always said? Then you watch the same shows you've always watched, and you listen to the same music you've always listened to, you go to the same clubs you've always gone to, and nothing's changed. Is there anything different? How can you influence those of the world to come and be a part of the Lord's church if they can't see the difference? What are you selling them? Are you selling them a 3.5 hour commitment once a week? Why would they want to come be a part of that? You're not selling them the difference if you are just a worldly person who goes to church. We can't be a worldly person that just goes to church. We've got to be restored and renewed in the image of Jesus Christ, and we've got to live a life in commitment to serving Him. That's what will be changing. That's what will convert others. Standing together. Nehemiah 4:16. After Nehemiah heard what was going on, he says, "From that day on, half my servants worked on construction and half held the spears, shields, bows, and coats of mail. And the leaders stood behind the whole house of Judah who were building on the wall. Those who carried burdens were loaded in such a way that their labor on the work with one hand and held his weapon with the other. And each of the builders had his sword strapped at his side while he built. The man who sounded the trumpet was beside me." You see what Nehemiah did is he understood that this attack was coming from all sides. And it was going to come from all different areas, and they need to be prepared. So he had everyone armed and prepared. Even the people that were building had swords on their sides. Those that were carrying rocks had a rock in one hand and a sword in the other. The others had spears and shields and coats of mail. They were ready to fight. Tulsa, are you ready to fight? Are you looking in the gap? Are your eyes pointed out into the world to see and be aware of what's coming in? Are you prepared to take on those challenges head on and not let that influence infiltrate the church? Be different. Fight. Because Nehemiah knew what mattered, and we need to know what matters. This is what matters. This is a body of believers who are committed to the cause of Christ. This is worth fighting for. This is worth dying for. This is worth your effort, your blood, sweat, and tears. This is what generations fought for in this location and in this community so that you could be here today to carry on that fight. Don't let a video pull you away. Don't let a soundtrack pull you away. Don't let something small and petty of this world pull you away. Stand firm and fight. I want to close with this. Nehemiah addressed the audience much better than I could. And he said, "And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, great and awesome, and fight for your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses." Brothers, fight. Sisters, fight. Don't give in to temptation. Do not give in to the cares of this world. Fight for what really matters. Fight for this church.